In our efforts to highlight Black community leadership, the Dominique Hoskins Black History Museum and Learning Center is pleased to share this oral history interview conducted in July 2025 featuring Tanzanika Carter, Assistant Sheriff of San Francisco. Before joining the San Francisco Sheriff's Office, Assistant Sheriff Carter served BART Police. She is the first woman of color to hold the role of Assistant Sheriff in the city of San Francisco. In this interview, we discuss representation in law enforcement, social justice, and the Assistant Sheriff Carter's own story. Can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
My name is Tanzanika Carter. I'm the Assistant Sheriff in San Francisco. It's the third highest ranking position in the department. I'm the first African American female to take that role. And what I do as the assistant sheriff is I aid the sheriff and the undersheriff in the 4 divisions that we have in our department. We have field operations, custody, admin, and projects and planning. And my main division is projects and planning, supervising different projects in our department, like today, in regards to technology and looking at different technologies and infrastructure to expand the department, make it more technologically sound and things like that. So I oversee that department, but I also do things like teaching. Yesterday I taught leadership. I am in the community. I work with different organizations in regards to the jails to listen to the voices of the community and really trying to work together and partner with different people. As the assistant sheriff, it's just a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but it all comes down to helping and assisting the sheriff and the undersheriff.
What influenced your sense of leadership and responsibility in your community, and how did that lead you to this work?
Before I answer that question, I just want to let people know a little bit about my education, if possible. So I have 2 bachelor's degrees, a criminal justice degree, and an ethnic studies degree. And recently I received a master's degree in law enforcement and public safety leadership, which is something that we will be talking about today. My very extensive leadership qualities have come from the church, actually. I grew up in the church and I had a lot of different roles in the church. I was a Sunday school teacher and then eventually became the superintendent of the entire Sunday school. And I also was the steward board chairperson, which handles the money, gets the budget together with the pastor. So I've really worked very hard in building relationships as it relates to the church, the people in the church, and of course, the community that was surrounding my church, which really prepared me for what I do now in the community and what I do in my role as the assistant sheriff, working together, partnering with different organizations and different groups, and really having that heart, the same heart that I had as a church member, still a church member, is the same heart that I have now. It's really about compassion and having empathy for the people that I serve, whether it was in church or whether it is in this role as the assistant sheriff. That is where everything came from in my leadership, building how I talk to people, building how I care about people. It all really started there.
What shaped your sense of justice and leadership?
As I promoted up in law enforcement, I have a broader view now of what justice looks like, what leadership looks like. It's really about modeling the way, and even the people that I come in contact with, whether they have done something wrong, still treating them with dignity and respect, treating people how I want to be treated is the first thing that we all learn, whether you're in church or not, is really still treating people with that dignity and respect. Yes, a person may have to go to jail, but they can go to jail with me saying sir or ma'am and still treating them with a level of respect because of them being humans. And so that part doesn't change. And as a leader, I expect the people that are my subordinates to follow my lead. For me, it is to model the way and to make sure that the people in my space look at me as the example, leading the way to understand how and why we treat people with dignity and respect, understanding the history of people of color and other communities who have been affected by law enforcement and poor law enforcement. So once we understand that history, history, then we must do better. And my goal in this job is to lead with that in mind and to make sure that I mold the people behind me to have that same mentality. So when they take my place, it will continue to not only be the same, but actually it will be better because they will add on as a building block to what we have already laid out as a foundation.
Can you share what led you to pursue a career in law enforcement and why you decided to go down this path?
My mom, she was a single mom and she worked two jobs, and I had to go over to my aunt's house over on the weekends when I was younger. She had, of course, my cousins who were a little older than me. So when I was about 11 years old, one of my cousins, he was 2 years older than me, so he was 13 years old, but he always got into trouble and he would go to juvenile hall quite often. So every weekend, my cousin may or may not have been in juvenile hall. And I looked at that and wondered why he liked to go to this place so much, but it always caused my aunt sadness and grief. And so when I was younger, I thought that when I got older, I would be a psychologist because I wanted to know the mind of my cousin and why he loved to go to jail so much. And when I got to school, I went to Cal State Hayward and I took my psychology classes. Didn't really like it. It wasn't me, but I took criminal justice classes and I found out that was really where I needed to be. I received that criminal justice degree, and then once I graduated, I didn't automatically go into law enforcement. I became a counselor for the YMCA, a youth counselor, and then eventually about a year or two later, I joined the sheriff's department. But I learned that criminal justice gave me the ability to be all that I was already. I loved teaching, I loved coaching, I loved mentoring, I loved justice and all of those things. And so being in law enforcement just molded me to who I am because I was already that person. It just added on to who I already was, and it morphed together to have a great career in law enforcement.
Can you walk me through a few important moments of your law enforcement career? What is significant to you? What stands out and why?
As it relates to leadership, having my daughter there with me when I promoted up is hard for a woman to be in law enforcement. And I would even say equally harder for a person of color and a woman to be in law enforcement. So I'm a single mom. My daughter is 24 now, but she has been with me throughout my entire career. And when I became pregnant and had my daughter as an officer, I did not think I could promote. I thought I could only be a mom, be the best mom I could be, and just work through that. And as she got older, my mentors came to me and really talked to me and encouraged me to promote. So as I took the leap of faith and promoted, and my daughter grew to be older, I basically saw this as an opportunity to be a role model for her and to show her that she could be anything that she wanted to be, even in a tough job or career as law enforcement. If this is where she wanted to be, she could be that way. As a ripple effect, I not only encouraged my daughter, but a whole group of young ladies who may not have thought that they could have a career in law enforcement. One of the pivotal things was when she was able to pin me, which meant put the star on my shirt when I became a lieutenant. And then she put the star on my shirt when I became the assistant sheriff. And it was just a way for me connecting not only with her, but for other women, other people of color, and to let them know that they can absolutely obtain these type of roles as well. There's always little things that have happened along the way working with the community, but that in particular is very important and dear to me because I do want to show people, especially the younger generation, that they can work very hard and obtain jobs where normally they would not have seen themselves.
Like you mentioned, you're the first woman of color to serve as San Francisco's assistant sheriff. What does that mean for you personally, and what do you think it means for your community?
It means a lot, because being the first means that you do not have an example to look to. You're basically crafting the template as you are in that role. And so it's a huge responsibility to be the first of anything. I took this role not to be the first, but I understood how important it was that someone was the first. And I was very honored to be asked to be in this role. And I really prayed on it and knew that God had me here for a purpose. And so in this role, my hope and my goal is to be in the community, to encourage people, not only by me being there, my presence, but the actions that I do as well. I want them to know that I am there to bridge the gap, to answer all questions, to minimize fears that they may have, to acknowledge the history that was there, to be a voice when people normally wouldn't talk the way I talk, in acknowledging that there have absolutely been errors where police officers have behaved badly. And although I am a law enforcement officer and have been doing this for 29 years, I've been an African American female way longer than that. And so I understand the community and I understand their feelings. And so I use my knowledge and my experience to bridge that gap and to hopefully have all of us coming together, because for me, it's not one community or the other community. We are one community. I am part of the community. I just happen to wear this uniform, like a doctor happens to wear that person's uniform, or someone else wears another uniform. It doesn't take away the fact that they are part of the community. If I didn't have this on, I would have the same angst and anxieties as anyone else if I was stopped by a police officer. It's the same thing. So I understand those feelings and those experiences, and I try to relay that to people who may not have had that experience so that they can be more compassionate and have more empathy when they do contact someone who may be a person of color or a woman or just someone who has that idea from social media what police officers do. I want to be the voice to give hope, but to also give genuineness, to also be real and to be authentic and to tell the truth. So for instance, when George Floyd, when he was killed, I felt terrible. Of course, everyone felt terrible. But as a Black police officer, there were many Black police officers who thought they were going to quit, because we have been in this field for so long thinking that real change was happening. And to have someone kill this person and being recorded and it's 9 minutes, it was too much for even us, because there's a lot of hurt that we have experienced being in law enforcement as Black people. We just kind of push it aside and do our job. But all of those hurts came out even for us. I was a Sunday school teacher, and at the time I was teaching my class online because it was COVID. And I wanted to have a discussion about what they may have been experiencing, what they saw, and if they had any questions for me, because I wanted to reassure them that we are not like that. I wanted to just be a listening ear to them. And as I started to talk to them about this incident, I just started to cry. And I didn't want them to see me that way, because I was supposed to be the strong one. I was supposed to be their listening ear. And so I told them to give me a minute. And I thought I put the call on, the audio blank out, but I guess the audio was still on. And I went to the bathroom and I just started wailing, like all of this inside of me had to come out. And so my daughter walked down the stairs and she said, "Mom, we can still hear you." But that was a really raw moment for me. I'm sure I wasn't the only one that experienced that, but they needed to see that although I wear this uniform and I'm very proud of the uniform and what the badge represents to me in regards to justice and equity, I also understand that there are people who have misused it. And my goal is to make sure that those people get weeded out and that we get the right type of person in.
How do you think about the ways you interact with the community of San Francisco? And then what is your approach when you're going into communities, and how do you think about that? Also, how do you interact with communities who have been historically and continue to be mistreated by law enforcement?
A lot of times law enforcement officers will go into the community and they're robotic. They feel like they can't be human because I'm wearing the uniform and I have to be super cop. And all the community wants to know is that you're human, that you're genuine, that that you're real. And so when I go into the community, I bring my authentic self. I love to dance. So if you ever saw me on TikTok or whatever, they're always catching me dancing in a parade. We just had Juneteenth and we were in the parade and we did some line dances. I am all about music and dancing and talking to the people. That is who I am. I'm boots on the ground as it relates to that. And people want to see us relatable. When I was at my other agency, I worked for BART Police as the lieutenant. And one of the national night outs, we had a DJ come to the Richmond BART station. And he's playing this great music. And I was telling the officers, let's dance with the people. And no one wanted to dance with us. And it was sad because they feel like if I'm real and human, somehow it takes away from their power and authority. But what it does is adds to your authority because people will see you in that position and understand that when you're telling them something, it's not out of this authority per se, but it's out of care and concern and compassion. I can absolutely do my job, arrest somebody, take them to jail, and treat them like a human being. If they try to hurt me, I am going to protect myself. That's my right as a police officer to do that because I'm going to go home too. However, I don't have to start the conversation belittling anybody or anything like that. And so, as many times as we can show people that we're human too, that we have families as well, that we are just silly and things like that, it tears down the wall that they have about us and it starts to build relationship. So as much as we can build on relationship, that is when our communities will reach out to us more because they'll trust us. The perception is police officers come into my community and all they do is arrest people. All they do is hurt people. All they do is shoot people. My goal is to go in that community and to acknowledge their perception, whether it's real or not, because their perception is their reality. So we have to acknowledge that perception, and then we have to get to the root of why they are feeling that way. Have they had their own experience? What was that like? What was going on? And not mitigate it, not try to chop it down or excuse it, because their perception is their perception. But then I can go in, I can just educate in a broad sense. I can sympathize because of what they're feeling. And we start from there because once you acknowledge somebody's feelings and not try to make them feel small because of how they feel and just be an active listener, that's again where the building trust will happen. So when I was at BART, there was an incident that happened where a young man who was 16 years old got shot by a couple of our BART police officers. He had a gun. He pointed the gun at the officers. The officers shot him. He didn't die, praise God, but he was in the hospital. His guardian was his grandmother, and I was tasked with calling the grandmother as a liaison to keep her abreast of our investigation. Now, of course, she's mad that her grandson was shot. She understands that he had a gun, but she didn't like the fact that he got shot so many times. I was not going to debate her on that. That is her reality. She loves her grandson as we would love any of our family members. And I told her in a very authentic way, whatever information I could tell her, I was going to tell her. I was very transparent. I was very compassionate because I understand if that was me, I would be the same way with one of my family members. We did not have a conversation at all about whether he was right or wrong. It wasn't the proper time for that. And at the end of the conversation, we prayed, because I understood from how we were speaking to each other that she was a woman of God, just like I was a woman of God. And I wanted to pray for her grandson that he did recover and that the situation would work itself out. And so for the longest time, we just had conversations about law enforcement and about being in the Black community. And through that building of trust, little by little, we were able to talk about his situation as much as we could. But she started to pray for me. She started to send me gospel songs. And it was a very organic relationship that was formed from a situation that was very dire and stressful to her, ended up being a situation where she and I formed a bond. And so it absolutely can happen between community, even in their worst time with police. But we as police and law enforcement have to acknowledge the emotions of that community, perceived or not perceived. We have to acknowledge that and to be active listeners. That's where we start. to build our relationships.
We've talked about the fact how people of color and women have historically been underrepresented in your profession. Why do you think that is? And do you see yourself as creating space for people who want to enter the profession who hold those marginalized identities?
So I am actually the chairperson of the 30 by 30 initiative. It's a national initiative to get more women into law enforcement. Each person does a pledge. Our sheriff did the pledge for the 30 by 30 initiative. And the pledge is to have our department 30% female by the year 2030. And that's why it's called the 30 by 30 initiative. I'm the chairperson of that. We've been pledging for 3 years now. We're going on our fourth year. And so my role is to recruit more women and to retain the women that we have there. We want to make sure that our women are valued. I understand that when I was a younger officer and didn't have this type of role in a command level, this has been always a good old boy system. Men who would have crude jokes and would talk about their wives and their girlfriends and the wives and the girlfriends at the same time. It wasn't a place where women could voice how they really felt about it. A lot of women felt like they had to be a part of the system so that they wouldn't target you in some sort of way. We always have had to prove ourselves. We have to prove that we're tough. We have to go in there and maybe be the first one to fight somebody because we have to prove that we belong here too. And we shouldn't have to prove ourselves. We go to the same academies like everyone else. There's nothing that the academies do that are different between a man and a woman. Every skill set is the same for each gender. There's nothing that's different. There's no specialty when you go to a physical agility test. We all have to pass the same type of test. So I don't want anyone to think that being a woman meant that I received or any other woman received special treatment or anything special to get in these departments. We worked for it and we earned it. So we deserve to be here. My goal is to encourage women who may not have thought that this is somewhere that they can be. As a single mom, I'm here to tell single moms, you absolutely have a spot here. As a Black person, you absolutely have a spot here. As a woman, please come to our department. It's important for women to know because there has been a study to show the more women that you have in a department, if there's at least 30% women in the department, which is the tipping point, uses of force go down, more victims of violent crimes like rape will come forward, and we will put more people who need to be in jail. Because women who have been assaulted or in DV cases or rape, they want to talk to people that look like them, people that they identify with. So they will be more open to tell us what is happening if women are there to hear their stories. And I'm not saying that men aren't empathetic or compassionate in hearing the stories. It's just that women want to see and identify with someone who may understand what they have gone through to tell their stories. And so we need more women in these spaces so that we can catch more of the violent crimes that may happen to deal with domestic violence and assault and things like that. And uses of force go down because the studies show that women will use effective communication more than brute strength. And so where men may want to go toe to toe with someone, a person who may be resisting arrest or want to resist arrest, a woman may de-escalate quicker or just use tactics in a way to keep herself safe because we understand that physical strength, we may not have that with certain people that we're contacting. However, do we get in the scrap? Absolutely. If there's a fight that's going to be on, the fight is on. We have OC spray, batons, all type of things, tasers to mitigate these situations and to keep ourselves safe. And so we absolutely will do those things as well. But again, the research has shown more women in the department, less uses of force, and more people will tend to be more open to those crimes that are dealing with violence. And so it's important that we're here. And I'm an advocate for women to be in these departments. And that's why I volunteered to be the chairperson for the 30 by 30 initiative so that we can make sure our policies reflect value for our women as well as the recruitment of our women.
What does just and equitable law enforcement look like to you? And then what steps do you think departments need to take to achieve that goal?
I love where we have community outreach police officers because it's a way for us to infuse ourselves in the community before we need to arrest anyone. We are on the scene to educate and to just build the bridges. In Ferguson, the people got upset because the police officers kept giving tickets to people in the poorest communities that couldn't afford the tickets. So there was an uprising because if you had a lot of the tickets, you couldn't vote. And so if you cannot vote, how does change happen in your community if you were given all these tickets that forced you not to vote because you can't afford the tickets? For me, it's the same thing when I was out in the street and I worked at the Coliseum BART station. It's in a predominantly Black area. Now, people were absolutely wrong. They fare evaded. They came off an elevator. They didn't pay the fare. There are certain people like the juveniles. Yes, they did something wrong, but equity tells me if I give this young person a ticket, can they pay for the ticket? No, they cannot pay for the ticket. So why would I continually bombard this person with tickets? Wouldn't it be better to educate or have a conversation and let this young person know, maybe give them a warning, what can happen if they continue to have this bad behavior? We have to, instead of thinking just one way with everyone, because there's absolutely people that can afford a ticket. I'm not saying don't give people tickets, but when you see someone that's homeless, that fare evaded, instead of having common sense and empathy for this person because they cannot pay for a ticket, they are homeless. Why am I adding to a homeless person's problems by giving them a ticket that I know they cannot pay for, that will turn into a warrant where eventually somebody's going to take them to jail because they fare evaded? Equity tells me, look at all the situation and ask yourself, what would be the best thing to do in this situation? As police officers, our job is not to be monotone, one-sided, focused on just one thing. Yes, we are law enforcement, but we can enforce the law in many, many ways. Warnings are okay. Cites are okay. There will be arrest at times, education, but we can turn those situations around. I've talked to many young people. I stopped a guy once, a young man. He came down the elevator, fare evaded. He was late for school. I ended up taking him to school, and he was part of this bike program. My department at the time, we actually started to gather up all the old bikes because they would fix bikes and then they would put their ice cream thing. They would sell ice cream, so they would attach it to the bike somehow. And so I turned that one contact where he could have got a citation into something where we helped a community of young people with bikes. And that's what we have to do as law enforcement. Think outside the box. Our goal is to build trust and legitimacy while we are enforcing laws where we need to take certain people to jail. So my plea, if there are any law enforcement people that are looking out there, the plea would be to let's look at people overall and just make the best decision possible for that person and think about what is just and what is equitable for this person. Again, some people may need to go to jail. Some people may need to have a citation, but there are absolutely certain people that all we're doing is adding to the problem, and that is not the solution.
What is a quality leader to you?
I'm going to say two things that mean the same thing. A person who has good character and integrity. I think you have to start there as a baseline because a person of integrity will do the right thing even when no one's looking. When we talk about leadership, I always like to say courageous leadership because you could lead a person down the road to hell or you could lead a person down the road to heaven. In leadership, it's a person of influence. So for me, courageous leadership is a person who will do the right thing even when no one's looking, and to be a person of good character, having those behaviors that exude integrity, trustworthiness, honesty, where a community member can absolutely look at you and know that whether you're taking them to jail or not, you're doing it for the right reason. You're not doing it just because you can. You're doing it because this is what needs to be done. And as a leader, when we are in that pocket of understanding good character is the basis for anything, as a leader, I am molding my deputies, my officers, officers to be of good character, to be people of integrity, to do the right thing, even when I'm not there watching them. That's where it starts in leadership.
What do you hope your legacy will be for the city of San Francisco?
When I leave the San Francisco Sheriff's Office, I really hope that I have brought some hope for females as it relates to letting them know that they can be anything they want to be. I don't want them to just think that all they can do is be in the jails. I want them to look at me and know that throughout all the challenges that I have had throughout my career, they can absolutely continue on. It's the same thing that I would want for my daughter. When I leave this place, I want my daughter to know she has every skill set, every tool that she needs to be the best person that she's supposed to be. That is what I want for the people in that department. I want to make sure that I have given them all of me. I want to leave it all on the table, and I want them to pick up every skill set, everything that I could possibly give them, so that when I leave, they know if she could do it, I can do it. I always tell my daughter, I don't want you to be me. I want you to be better than me. This is a building block. I'm just a building block. Build on what I am giving you. And so I want to come back 10 years later and look at the Women's Leadership Conference that we started. And like I tell them, I want it to be better than when I had that position. I want you to take it and just run with it. And I'm excited to see what they will do once I leave there because of what I've poured into them. I just want to see it not be here, but be better than that.
Was there anything else that we didn't cover that you want to share?
I just want to let people know, as a person of color, I understand the hesitation at times for people to want this type of job. There's always been this barrier where some people of color have decided because they're in these communities that being a police officer is not them. They feel like they're violating the code because police officers are bad. And I am in this career field because I really want to affect change. I understand that law enforcement started very nasty, very ugly as the slave patrol. I understand that. And we have to get to the root and dig all of that out. The only way we can do it is from the inside out. Marching is great. I don't take anything away from the marching. We also need people in legislation to write different policies and laws, but we also need people of color in these positions to take over, to be the voice of others who feel like they have no voice. It just can't be me and the few people that we see in law enforcement. So I would encourage people of color, come to the departments, use your voice to effect real positive change that will benefit every community. It's not just going to benefit one community or the other. Real change, real positive change will affect in a positive way all communities. And that's what I want for law enforcement. I don't want to be the assistant sheriff just for African Americans. I'm the assistant sheriff for every community. And I want every community to know that they are valued, that their voice matters, that we want to work with them and partner with them to make their communities safe. We don't want to take over. We just want to help. And the best way to do that is to be a part of this community as well in law enforcement. So we are hiring. We have over 100 positions available. Come on down. You can talk to me, talk to one of the recruiters, but wherever you land, I want you to seek out this position and ask yourself, can you affect change? And the answer is yes. So thank you for allowing me to be on here today.